I think probably the most common mistake a small business owner would make is thinking that they're too small to be a target. Quite often what they'll do is say, the attackers are after me, I'm not a big name, I don't hold a lot of control data like credit card or whatever, so nobody's going to come to me. And that's a really foolish way of thinking, because just by being on the internet, you become a target.
Hello, everyone. I'm Paola Lorenzo, Public Relations Manager here at Network Solutions. And today we're going to talk all things Cybersecurity Awareness Month with Geof Birchall, our Vice President of Information Security. Thank you so much for being with us, Geof. First question for you is, what are the most common cybersecurity mistakes small business owners make, and how can they avoid them?
I think probably the most common mistake a small business owner would make is thinking that they're too small to be a target. So, quite often what they'll do is say, the attackers are after me, I'm not a big name, I don't hold a lot of control data like credit card or whatever, so nobody's going to come to me. And that's a really foolish way of thinking, because just by being on the internet, you become a target. I see an awful lot of attacks. Our systems run about 5% of the internet, so I see a lot of evil. And while you may not be the big target that they're bragging about, there's several ways that small business can become a target. There's a huge difference between cybersecurity from, say, 15 years ago, 20 years ago when I started, and today. And there are some things that the threat actors have done which amplifies their ability to act widely and at all ranges, so that they minimize their effort. Their motivations fall into four main groups. There's a nation-state actor, someone like North Korea or whatever, where their aim is generally to establish themselves somewhere where they have a large amount of bandwidth and they can act against the people that they actually want to act against. For example, it may be a Chinese APT, a Chinese threat group, and they want to take out a political target like Falun Gong, Taiwan government, whatever. So they may attack our infrastructure in order to do that. When they attack our infrastructure, they also take our customers along with them. So there's those people. And then at the other end of the scale, you've got the guy sitting in his basement in Montreal who's trying to build a name for himself. And he can do that by successfully breaching folks just like our customers. And then he's able to take those breached accounts and either resell them on the internet, or he's able to take them and just brag about them and build up his own credibility. Because just like we have social networks, the threat actors are well organized in social networks as well. They have social media, different kind to ours. They're not on Facebook, although some of them are, but they're out there on their forums bragging and selling and trying to generate revenue and street cred and so forth as well. So our small business customers become some of the collateral damage from those people trying to build their own business.
Yeah. And like you said, that they don't even think that they're a target because they're too small.
Who's going to protect me? Who's going to attack me? But of course, they're on the internet. Somebody will.
Yeah. What would you point to dispel that notion?
Well, I think that most of it's just hubris. If you put your business on the internet, you're putting your business publicly available to anybody, whether it's somebody with good intentions or neutral intentions, somebody who's trying to find out about your business, or somebody with bad intentions. And the thing I think that the small business owner needs to know is that whether they like it or not, they have no real control. Somebody will attempt to attack them. So what's your plan? What's your plan when somebody attacks me?
That's my next question, is what should a basic checklist be for a small business to really defend themselves and in honor of cybersecurity awareness?
Well, they should be choosing a good quality provider. You get what you pay for in this business. So they should be choosing someone who also takes security seriously. And, that requires the small business owner to ask some questions, about breaches and looking up their breach history on search engines and finding out who's got a good reputation. The second thing is that the small business owners should be taking some responsibility for their own security. It's not just, oh, I'm trusting my service provider to do this all for me. So, for example, they should be doing this basic hygiene that keeps them safe. For example, if they're using WordPress as their content management system and that WordPress has got plugins, they should be checking and making sure that plugin is at its highest patch, and the patches are released all the time. And when they release the patch, they say, oh, it covers off against this particular vulnerability or this one or this one. Well, Evil is also reading those release notes. So Evil will say if the person's on 2.5, they must be now vulnerable to this. So it's critical that you don't just install and forget. And, you should be doing a security review every year. Just like if you've got a physical business, you lock the door and then you check it before you leave, right? The same thing with your internet business. You should be going through the components of your internet business and say, is this secure? Is this secure? And if you don't have that expertise to do it yourself, there is a ton of resourcing out there to help you do it.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you have any recommendations on some of those tools or practices?
Yeah, I can give you a link that you can use after this, but CISA, which is the US government organization around computer security, maintains a list of free and open source tools focused on websites and internet security. They've already checked those tools for being functional and so forth. So people, if they've got a particular need, they can go to that CISA site and they can filter through and they can find a tool that they can use. The second thing that the small business owner should be doing is having a disaster recovery plan. One of the biggest threats to internet business today is ransomware. It's got far more complex, far more sophisticated, far more damaging than it was, 10 or 15 years ago. So I have personal experience of ransomware events where organizations outside of my work have contacted me and say, we've been ransomed. We've been, we've all of our information is encrypted. What can we do? And I go to them and I'm just startled at the lack of preparedness. So what they do is they say they'll send a phishing email to an employee. The employee clicks it, not just views it, but clicks on the payload. The payload infects that machine. That machine then looks to see what other connectivity it has across the business network, to the file server, to the billing system, to the exchange server or mail server, and it proceeds to make those unavailable through encryption, which means the business now can't function and is being held hostage by the threat actor. It happens all the time. If you've got a situation where you've got frequent backups of your critical systems and you have a plan that if your file server becomes unavailable, how would you restore that service to your business? Then you're in a much better situation than the person just walks in on Monday morning and finds they can't hit the file server. So I would say that, if you're asking me, what can small business do? Plan for ransomware. Have a backup plan. Have a disaster recovery plan to help you get through that. It's going to be painful either way, but this changes it from you are no longer in business to you're going to have to scurry around for a couple of days.
Definitely. And I love the analogy that you placed. Like, you're going to protect your home by checking the front door, you should protect your business and your website by checking those protocols. Love that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. So AI is very prominent in the world today. How does AI play a role? How can AI be used in cybersecurity?
Well, AI is an equal opportunity tool. It gets used by evil as well as by good. How can it be used in business? Well, there's an awful lot of marketing speak out there, awful lot of people trying to sell AI, and it's very, very poorly defined. But so I'm not going to position myself as some kind of AI cynic. I try to think of myself as being a realist or a pragmatist about it. But there are some things that what they label AI is really, really capable of doing and really, really helpful in doing. And, that is especially with generative AI, with large language models and the ability to be able to generate copy. generate text. So what it also does is it enables you to amplify your work output. And that's where evil is using it. So whether they would be where it would take them hours or days or head count to be able to get through a list of all of these targets and be able to enact their mass attacks and so forth. Now it takes them a matter of minutes to do it. And I've seen it myself where it's patently obvious that this was an automation attack or it was an AI attack, simply because the volume and the range that they were hitting was so big that it couldn't be people on a keyboard. So in your business, if you've got work that can be clearly defined, that can be chopped up, sliced up into the various parts of the tasking, there's an opportunity for you to be able to use artificial intelligence or the GPT style tools to be able to automate those processes and remove a human from it. But it comes with some caveats, and that is you can't trust those outputs. So there needs to be a human at the other end that is in command and control of this tool. If you'd like, I can expand on that. Yeah. All right. So the thing about large language models is that, and AI in general, at the moment, they can't actually think. They can't reason. They have no ethics. What they can do is predict, and they predict based on the material that they've been trained on. If you give them a bunch of books on 20th century US politics, and then you ask them about somebody called Roosevelt, that tool will know that there's a 50% chance you're talking about Franklin. There's a 25% chance you're talking about Eleanor. And there's a 25% chance you're asking about Teddy. So it will form its responses based on that predictive probability of those words clustering. It doesn't know what the word Roosevelt or the word Franklin Roosevelt means or how it's used or anything. It just knows that within the material that it's learned, that they're frequently associated with each other. So effectively, it's a very, very smart predictive text engine. So the trouble with it is that these engines are trained under certain guardrails, and quite often they're opaque to the user. They don't know what the producer of this AI tool is told it can and cannot do. So with a predictive language tool like an LLM, it's quite easy for them to go off the rails. What happens is that the tool is rewarded by the fact that it continues to engage you. It'll do anything it can in order to engage you, even lie, even make up stuff out of whole cloth. And if you've followed the news at all, you've seen some pretty prominent legal cases getting derailed because the lawyers relied on a large language model to generate their case. And they didn't review that document before it went before the judge. And the judge discovered upon reading that, in fact, a lot of the precedents and cases and legal, details that were in it were completely fabricated, which is a terrible position to be in if you're a lawyer. So these people over-relied on the LM. The second example would be we had an airline in North America where the chat engine made promises to the customer that didn't exist within the boundaries of the refunds and customer relations policy of the company. So suddenly they were on the hook for paying money because they made promises. They were sued, and they were sued successfully. So I think the way that you should approach AI inside your own work business is to treat it like an intern, really effective, really keen to do work, but you have to check their work. In the great scale of the development of people, from having to be directive with them, having to be supportive, having to coach them, and then being able to delegate to them. AI at the moment is very much in the directive stage of its development. In other words, it's a great intern, but you can't trust its copy.
Absolutely. Okay. And are there any applications of AI specifically that small business owners can use in cybersecurity? Not just the risks and treating them like an intern, which absolutely we should, but are there any other applications directly in cybersecurity?
Well, I mean, every tool out there that is at an enterprise level includes the key phrase of AI. A lot of that so-called AI is simply automation, a pattern matcher. For small business, they're not so available because generally those tools have to be operated like that. So you're trusting that your infrastructure provider is using AI to operate his tool or his environment. So for example, in Newfold, we use endpoint protection, agents that sit out on our endpoints, and those endpoints are extremely good at pattern matching. And those tools are very, very good at matching those inputs against their own, knowledge of threat. So effectively using AI to be able to filter the threats before they actually land on the endpoints and be able to stop and block those attackers. Those tools won't be appropriate or won't be available to a small business owner in their office location. They would have to rely on something that is probably much less complex. And that would be things like effective antivirus and anti-malware. So if a small business owner right now is looking for tools to make them more secure, the very first thing is get a good quality provider. One that has those endpoint tools, that has those expensive tools already paid for. The second thing is to maintain your asset that's out there on the internet. So update those plugins, maintain your site. Third thing is have that disaster recovery plan so that if all goes to heck, you inconvenienced rather than destroyed. And the fourth thing is that where you have offline resources, ones that are in your home office or in your small business office, make sure that those assets are all protected with basic software like antivirus and anti-malware. Those tools are not perfect by a long shot, but they make it you're trying to make it harder for the attacker. So, there are some cybersecurity practices that I overlooked when I was talking before, but it's things like making sure you don't have shared passwords for applications. Making sure that when people turn in your business, when you lose an employee, that you shut down their access quickly. Making sure that business systems are only accessed using business computers. And making sure that you use things like, VPN and so forth to protect yourself when you are on the internet, so that you lessen your chance of losing that critical data. So, yeah, there's a whole range of things that you can do, and there's a ton of help out there to do it. You either go to CISA, or you get professional services done. I know that, a lot of hosting companies, our own one included, will do professional services for you to help you stay secure. And of course, Google is a great friend. So just, if you have an interest, stay informed. Otherwise, just do the basics, protect yourself.
Absolutely. Geof, thank you so much for your time. This is the sort of education and insights that we really want to provide for entrepreneurs and small businesses everywhere. So we're very grateful to you.
Look, I believe in a healthy internet. And one of the things that keeps me working is the fact that I feel that I can make a difference and that I want to help small business stay secure. So I'm more than happy to do it.
Thank you. And happy Cybersecurity Awareness Month.